PowerPlayChess, brought to you in association with Kagi. On Friday evening, I gave an exclusive lecture for my patrons. The theme, the biggest mistakes that amateurs make. This was held over Zoom, so that meant we could have a Q&A session using the chat, and I think it went pretty well. It was really nice to meet some of my supporters online. So if you'd like to join in the next lecture, then sign up to patreon.com/powerplaychess and follow the instructions, and I'll send you a link. And check out all the extra material that you get when you become a patron. There are different benefits depending on how much you contribute per month. The video that follows is a clip from the lecture, and you can hear my tech partner, Pascal, call out suggestions to me from the viewers. He was reading the chat while I was doing the chess moves. So I'm discussing a game played by two club players in the Caro Kann Exchange Variation, and the play is uneven. But I think the inaccuracies are very instructive. So I hope you find this of benefit, and hopefully I'll see more of you at the next lecture, which takes place on Friday the 28th of March. Places are limited, so book your spot quickly. Okay, so e4. The good old Caro Kann. And white exchanged. There we go, releasing the tension very quickly. I really like this variation for white, actually. I used to play it, and what I like about it is that white gets very nice activity without too much downside, actually. It's basically a Queen's Gambit exchange variation if I do a quick compare and contrast. Like this. It's exactly the same structure, but in the Queen's Gambit exchange variation, white is able to control some very important diagonals, whereas in this position, white's pieces are much better. And there's an extra tempo. Okay, in this position, yeah, unbelievably, white played h3. Now, this one is not so bad, incredibly. It's been played by most of the world's top players. Carlsen has played this move. Abdusatorov, Keimer, Firuzja, for example. The point is that we want to restrict this bishop. Now, the old main line, I should say, is c3, and then bishop f4. The bishop comes out, and so on. But this bishop comes into play and is often able to exchange off the bishop on d3. So the point of this is to restrict that bishop on g4. And for example, Carlsen has played like this. Now if c3, then e5 and black breaks out, but knight f3. So you see you've prevented bishop g4. Anyway, that's the idea behind h3. So knight c6 is a normal move, but black actually played knight d7. Now that's very bizarre. I can only speculate on why he played that. White played knight f3, why not? And here black played h6. So we've had two of these moves. I understand h3. h6 I simply do not understand at all. There really is a special place in hell for the player of the black pieces after this move. He actually went on to win the game, so he got a reprieve, I think. But actually, that's not my theme for tonight. So let's continue. So in this, I think white already has a beautiful position. Can anyone name another opening where you get almost exactly this structure and almost exactly these pieces? It's very similar to another opening.
The London is suggested.
Absolutely, the London system. Well done. Yeah. So quick compare and contrast. It's very important. So here, let's say random move order. This here. Now, bishop d6 is the best move, but let's say this here. And if black is careless and takes this too early, and many thousands of players have done this, and this accounts for the popularity of the London system, suddenly white has a tremendous position because it opens up the e-file, and it means that, for example, the rook or the queen has access to the king side. You know, simple play for white. So that's what's happened here. So knight d2, very similar. Now, queen b6. And again, yeah, with this move, I don't know whether to laugh or to cry. I see this so often that the queen goes on some shopping spree in the opening, wants to grab something. Okay, white to play. What are you going to do? What would you play here with white? Because in this game, white got it wrong. And it's very subtle. Sorry, Pascal, yeah.
Yeah, we have already the first suggestions. Matt is suggesting knight e5 and Alex queen e2.
Okay, knight e5. I'm going to be very brave and take that pawn. I might get away with it. So I'm not sure about, I think knight e5 might be premature. Queen e2. Yeah, you could simply offer this pawn. I wouldn't be very worried about that pawn being taken, but you need to justify it. I mean,
we have more.
Yeah, please.
Knight b3.
Knight b3. Well, that's very solid. Blocks out the queen. It might give that knight access to e4. I don't know if I'm going to be very brave and put it there immediately. This might give black a little bit of hope. So I'm not sure about knight b3 actually. Go on, more?
Another one was b3.
b3, yep, okay. Very sensible. Stops queen takes pawn for a start, and it's not clear to me what the queen is doing here. Anyone else?
Yeah, we have rook e1.
Rook e1, again in for a penny, in for a pound. You could give up a pawn. Okay, it's interesting. Well, listen.
We have even more.
Okay, go on.
Rook b1.
Rook b1. That's, for me, that's the best move. Yeah, you can gambit this pawn in various ways. I mean, I would actually say that c4 is perhaps the most interesting move.
But that has been also suggested.
Also suggested, very nice.
Yeah.
And after queen b2, c5 stops the queen running back very quickly, and also kind of cripples black's queen side, because after b6, you know, you always have to reckon with c6. So it's not easy for black to develop after this. So I think c4 is very interesting, and obviously this one can allow, you know, a knight d6. So c4 I think is very interesting. I think rook b. If you're not going to sack the pawn, I think rook b1 is the best move, and I'll explain why in a second when we look at the game continuation. b3. You wouldn't think so, but I think this puts white's advantage in jeopardy. Incredibly, black actually played a really good move here. Bishop d6. And I mean, obviously, if the bishop goes back, then it's a bit passive. I mean, that queen can move back, and b6, and bishop comes here. Actually, black has kind of straightened himself out. And white really should exchange. That's what happened. And that benefits black. Suddenly this queen is far better placed than on b6. And white has quite a tricky decision here. Do you leave that pawn on c2 and play for the attack with knight e5 and so on? Do you put it on c3 to cover some squares, cover the d pawn, or do you go all the way to c4? It's very difficult. And this is the problem with b3, that after that exchange of bishops, it's actually left. Do you notice it's not just the fact that c3 is weakened, it means that d4 is a little bit weakened. I'm going to show you the game, c4, as I can see running way over time. And actually after b6, I think white suddenly thought, oh, hang on, this isn't so simple, because, for example, after this, bishop b7, notice we've got some tension here. You know, black can decide when to take and maybe take here. And the rooks come into the middle. You know, this is actually quite tricky. There are, you know, these hanging pawn positions, so-called hanging pawn positions, are very difficult. So, for example, after this, let's say, okay, the random move, I don't like rook c2, but I'm just for the sake of illustration. You know, knight c5, very typical trick, exploiting a pin. Not that it's fatal, but, you know, if the bishop comes back here, okay, the knight comes in. You know, once pieces start getting exchanged, you can see that these pawns become weaker. I mean, certainly white has no attack here. It's incredible how from this position, where black's development looks hopeless, but after this move, actually, black is okay. It's quite extraordinary. But just moving on, white suddenly realised, wow, this is not so clear. He's absolutely right. So he decided to take on d5. Terrible! Terrible, really terrible, particularly with that pawn on b3, because you can see that the c3 square is weakened. That knight is absolutely beautiful. Normally I'm a big fan of playing with the isolated queen's pawn. I love the space it gives you. I love the fact that, you know, you can get the initiative, use the outpost. But this is not a good version. I mean, white played like this. Actually, it's still not that bad for white, but somehow, again, the tendency in the game is not in white's favour. And black is very, very comfortable here. It's very hard for white to generate an attack, particularly because of this c-file. You can see this square is a little bit weaker. So already, so the game went like this. I mean, knight h4 is that's, I think, indicative of the fact that white is lacking a plan here. You know, you've got the pieces to nice squares, but what do you do with it? Knight h4 is not a good move, and black simply played queen b4, which basically forced a queen exchange, and this is tremendous for black. With this knight has the potential top in here, and that pawn is not very good. Yeah, it went like this, and actually white blundered through. White was under pressure and blundered. Split rooks, there we go. And simple pin won the game. But I think that's an indication that basically it got to this position and white was really thrown that suddenly, you know, black was back in the game. But I think that whole thing is very interesting after queen b6. You know, b3 was not the best move. Rook b1 is far better. And let me give you a compare and contrast. If black tries the same thing, okay, I'll play some random moves here, but let's say black does exactly the same. I mean, I don't think black has much better here. See the difference? That, you know, there's black simply can't, you know, for example, try to get in on c3. This queen can't come to b4 to attack these squares, or down to a3. Black has no counterplay on the queen side, and white can build up at leisure here. You know, perhaps triple on the e-file. Put the queen on f3. Even contemplate an advance with the h and g pawns, because white is so stable in the middle of the board. It's just a massive difference. You compare this position, it's simply not possible. You know, for example, if you do this, you see the difference that black can do stuff like this, and this is actually quite vulnerable. I just thought, it's one of those situations where a tiny pawn move makes a massive difference, and then again we come back to my theme of breaking the tension. I mean, white should not play like this. It's still roughly level, but it was too much in the end.